Larry Bogan. I'm a retired physicist. My wife Alison and I live here in the Annapolis Valley, Nova Scotia. We have a field of about 2 hectares that we've let go wild. And it's grown up in common milkweed. And we have devoted this field essentially to allowing the monarchs to breed here every summer from about July to September. It's an idea of trying to increase the population of monarch butterflies for the migration that takes place in August, September, and October. Monarchs don't overwinter here. They actually overwinter, at least our population does, in Mexico, near Mexico City. The number of monarchs seen in the roosting area in the mountains of Mexico has decreased dramatically. Fewer and fewer monarchs were reaching their roosting area, partly because of the corn crops in the Midwest, where they started spraying and killing off weeds such as milkweed in these very productive areas for monarchs. And so the decrease in the migration rate has been a concern. It's actually labeled as endangered in Nova Scotia, which means that we should try to do something to help its population and plan for its recovery. And that's essentially what we're doing now. They fly up here, not in one hop, but probably the 3rd or 4th generation up here in Nova Scotia. So that's what we see it coming to our field. And then when we raise the monarchs, those monarchs, some of them, if they're raised before the middle of August, will stay and lay more eggs. So we may get a 2nd generation after the middle of August. They then have to fly all the way back down to Mexico to the roosting area.
I'm Alison Bogan. My background is a science background, but not particularly biology. After I retired, I became interested in doing more things outside, gardening, that kind of thing. Natural history became much more of an interest for me. Well, when we first moved here, we had this field, and we knew that in order to prevent it from reverting back to forest, we had to keep it cut. It was a hay field when we bought the property. I had this brilliant idea that we would stop mowing the field and we would create a meadow. Very naively, I thought that all you had to do was stop mowing and that instantly you would get all these wonderful wildflowers coming up from the field. As it turned out, what we ended up getting was a lot of milkweed, which is a very sturdy plant, and it spreads very quickly. Well, milkweed is important for the monarch butterfly because it is the only plant that the larva can use as a source of food. Now, there are many kinds of milkweed. The ones that grow here in Nova Scotia, the one that is quite pervasive is the common milkweed.
The monarch lays an egg usually on the underside of a young milkweed plant. The egg is about the size of a head of a pin. They come out of the egg and then eat on the milkweed and grow, and they go through 5 stages of molting and growing until they get in the chrysalis stage. While they're molting, and that is they're shedding their skin, they're essentially dormant, and they're very susceptible to predation. Ants, we've seen stink bugs take large caterpillars. There's spiders in the field and many other insects.
I used to think that once they had pupated, they were safe, but we've discovered that that's not really the case, that they still get predated.
And in fact, we've seen chrysalises taken from the plants, probably by mice or something like that. So there's all these predators in the field, which ends up leaving only 1% generally, making it all the way to adult.
Now, the monarchs that come here to our field, they'll lay between 200 to 500 eggs. They tend to like these smaller plants. I suppose they lay them on the small one because the plant grows as the caterpillar grows. So they have an instant supply of food. We do try to manage the fields so that we have a good supply of the small milkweed.
The milkweed starts to sprout in about mid-May, and by mid-July, early July, it's in full flower. However, the monarchs don't arrive until mid-July, and so by that time most of the milkweed is tall and robust. So in order to have lots of young plants growing in the field for the monarchs to lay their eggs, I mow at the end of June in preparation for the arrival of the adults in July.
I've also found, however, that the larger larvae tend to want to migrate to larger plants. I suppose there's more shelter for them from predators when it comes time for them to attach and to pupate. So I think it's probably important to have both. Over the past several years, we have started to get wildflowers emerging. We now have quite a good patch of goldenrod, which it comes flowers in the fall. We have clover, both the white and the red clover, and we're starting to get wild asters and things of this nature. And this is really important because the adult monarchs need something to nectar on. And the common milkweed, when it flowers, is a wonderful source of nectaring for the monarchs that visit us in July. But later on in the season, after that flower has passed, the adults still need some plants to nectar on. And so this has become part of the total package, I guess. We need both the milkweed for the young caterpillars, but you also need the flowers for the adults. Our philosophy of rearing is to be as non-invasive as possible. So when we bring in an egg, we'll pull up the whole plant. We have plenty of plants, so there's not a problem. We'll then put the plant with its little egg on it in some water, and I tend to put it in as natural environment as possible. So for us, that has been mainly on the windowsill in the kitchen. Of course, we have to replenish the milkweed. That's a constant chore. We also have to keep it clean, meticulously clean. So I'll be getting all of the droppings of the larva have to be swept up several times a day. We let them wander around. When they have to molt, they often will go on to the screen of the window, and they'll stay there for at least 24 hours. After their last molt, they get pretty big, and it's at that point that we move them into a cage. The cage is made up of old screens, and so it's it's a large area for them. They can wander around, they can move from one milkweed plant to another, and that is that's the stage at which they find a place to attach. The chrysalis is in the cage after a period of anywhere from 10 days to 2 weeks. Finally eclose, or that's the fancy name for emerging from the chrysalis. They'll emerge, they'll hang. We let them just do their thing. They have to pump up their wings. They have to let their wings dry out. Once they start to fly around in the cage, then we know it's time to let them go. So we'll very gently grasp the full butterfly by the wings, and if we're going to be tagging them, that's the stage at which we'll attach this tiny round tag to the wing.
We tagged butterflies using tags that are available from Monarch Watch, which is based at the University of Kansas. Monarch Watch is a major organization for studying monarchs. They go down and collect the tags in Mexico. We also send in that information as to what ones we've tagged.
The last several years we have also measured the length of the forewing, and we're just tracking how big our monarchs are before we release them. We'll put them outside. Sometimes they fly away. Other times they're a little bit more reluctant, and in that case I'll just put them on a plant so that perhaps they need to dry out their wings a little bit longer. We think they probably stay around for a couple of days nectaring, and then they're off and away.
We've been tagging now for since 2011, about 8 years. We've tagged about not quite 400 monarchs. We've had 2 tags show up in Mexico, so we now know that some of our monarchs fly all the way down 4,300 kilometers plus to the mountain sanctuary in Mexico.
2018 was a banner year, and we had so many chrysalises and so many larvae in the field that we decided to just leave them in the field. The chrysalises are green, and they tend to be attached to the underside of a plant, usually the mature milkweed, but not always. And they tend to be really hard to find. And I was finding I would find a chrysalis and want to keep an eye on it, but then I'd forget where it was. And so we decided that we would try to mark the location of the wild chrysalises with flags. These are just little white pieces of plastic flag attached to a metal stake. And it's been very, very helpful in terms of being able to relocate chrysalises and keep an eye on them. Finding the first chrysalis is always the big challenge. Once you've found one, then you can normally find a number of others. They tend to congregate together in one spot.
In 2018, we had our biggest year. We released 500, and then this last year, 2019, we had 300. So it's just snowballed.